Forever. Dog.
You know, Billy Friedkin, years ago, I was like very young. I was like maybe my second or third job. And I said to him, I go, Billy, what if I do this over here? And he goes, yeah, that's great, but you're not in the frame, so you're not in the movie. And I'm like, oh, copy that. Yeah, that's terrific, kid. But I don't know what movie you're in because you're not in this one.
Welcome to Household Faces, the podcast where a character actor interviews other character actors. I'm your host, John Ross Bowie. You might know me from The Big Bang Theory or Speechless or the Netflix Channel 4 co-pro Feel Good. Our guest this week is Yul Vazquez, who you'll recognize as Pete from Severance, but has a really long and interesting career filled with very zeitgeisty roles. We talk a little bit about his tendency to book parts that sort of reflect something that's going on in the culture, whether it's a mistrust of corporate America in Severance, whether it's the idea of a multiverse in Russian Doll, whether it's people questioning the efficacy of the drug war in Narcos. And we also talk a little bit about hair metal organically. It comes up very, very organically. He was in two bands that could come under that moniker. A Havana native who has lived in the United States since he was 2. His career spans music and the visual arts and film and TV. There's some Seinfeld in there. There's the Mambo Kings. It's a really, really interesting, diverse road he has taken. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this interview. And there's also some really good practical actor advice thrown in there. Please welcome our guest, Yul Vazquez. First of all, Yul, thank you so much for doing this and taking the time. I know you're in Miami right now, and I know you've got a lot of work to do. So I appreciate you taking an hour and a half or so. But I want to talk, since we're discussing work, I want to talk about Severance, because it seems like it's sort of an amazing time for that show to be on the air. There's just this general sense since the pandemic of like, okay, our bosses want us to come to work no matter what the cost. You know, the show business has to go on no matter what dangers it imparts to our employees. All systems go. And then a show like Severance comes along. And I'm assuming you shot it during the pandemic.
In the center of it.
In the center of it, yeah. You've all got masks in your pocket.
Literally, yeah. Masks and shields. Yeah, masks and shields. The thing about Severance was that it was originally going to shoot. It was originally going to shoot in March, and then the pandemic hit, and then they pushed to September of 2020, right, which is still
no vaccines.
You know, we're right in it, man. There's no vaccine. There was no talk. You know, none of that was happening, and pushed through a lot of regulations. You know, a lot of guidelines, but very hard to do something that is a very acting, as you know, it's a very personal endeavor. It requires no masks and no filters. It requires complete openness, and then to do it in, all the rehearsals, everything was with a mask and a shield.
Oh man! So
we were required to wear shields as well. Either shields or this eyewear. Okay. Because of course the COVID could go into your eyes.
Yeah.
The shield was like this, those collars that they put on dogs when they on their heads, those cones?
Yeah, to keep you from chewing your stitches.
So, right. So it was a collar, and then the shield was only in the front, and it went up.
Oh, God.
So you had the mask and you had a shield. And in fact, and everybody's shield had a name. And Adam says Adam or whatever. And then mine, I wrote B. Arthur on mine. I was like,
sure,
I'm going to do B. Arthur.
Why not? Yeah.
And Ben was like, what is that? I'm like, I just think there's not enough attention is paid to her.
No, by all means.
And I wanted to fucking, like, if we're going to do this madness, let's fucking go. Let's go full tilt, man.
Yeah, and you want to honor that legacy.
Absolutely, with the fucking shield.
By all means.
But the crazy thing was you didn't want to cut, because when you cut, all the COVID officers would come on with boxes, and then the mask and the shield will go on, and then they would spray our hands, and we go like this, and then that was 10 minutes.
Right.
So sometimes we just wouldn't cut, and we would just keep rolling, and the directions would come in, and then when Ben had it, then he'd cut. But you could have takes that were 25, 30 minutes.
Well, that was
like
what
takes on the digital.
Right. That leads me to two more questions. What's interesting about your character, what distinguishes your character, particularly in the early episodes, is that you're the only guy who realizes how bad things are. So you've got to have an emotional rawness that the other characters have the luxury of not going to. Peach is kind of falling apart because he has some idea of how bad things have gotten at the company, whereas everyone else is in their kind of, they're quite literally separating their work and their life, and they have no idea what the other hand is doing. So did you think it was maybe a little extra challenging for you to get to that rawness while your head's wrapped in gauze?
Yeah, basically wrapped in gauze. Yes, it was. So your question is very interesting because Pete I also knew where I had to get. I knew it was 4 episodes.
Right.
I knew exactly the trajectory. I didn't know. I didn't have all the scripts.
Okay.
But I knew from my discussions with Zooms. I was here in Miami actually because I landed in Miami in March 12th of 2020.
That's the day before LA locks down.
I had been in LA. The next day was locked down.
Yeah, because it was Friday the 13th. I remember that everything shut down. Right. Yeah.
Correct. I had been in LA to do a reshoot of something and landed here because I was coming here. I had a show. I had an opening I was having a gallery show.
Right, because you're a painter and a photographer, as we discussed before. Yeah.
The 13th, everything shut down, and that was it. So I had conversations from here with Ben Zooms and Dan and Adam. We rehearsed. We were able to rehearse some things. So I knew where I had to go.
Okay.
So that made it easier in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I knew where I had to wind up. So we had to pace this thing. You didn't want to peak this thing too quick because we had to go to a very dark end in 3.
Right.
So that was an advantage. The disadvantage was that it was a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And Ben said, look, you're going to have to, the show turns on you. So I remember saying to him a couple of times while we were shooting, I said, fuck, this part is hard. And he said to me, yeah, that's why I fucking hired you.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Basically stop complaining about how hard the part is. That's why you're fucking here. Like, just shut up. Like, that's the part. We know that's the part. So, it's one of those things, actors going like, fuck, man, how am I going to do this? Because it was fucked up. We looked at videos of guys convulsing and then the hemorrhaging, and it was all.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, there was the seizure.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shot he didn't use where I'm convulsing on the ground, which may have been just too much for the folks. But when I fall down from the freezers, it's kind of, the guy's it goes into a full-on seizure. But so the answer to your question is yes, it was very hard with all the layers we had. But the advantage for me was that I knew where the finish line was. I knew what I had to get to.
Okay.
And if you know that, it's good because you can then you have a target.
Yeah, it's almost like an emotional roadmap. Like you've got to hit this place, and then eventually you're going to end up here. And that end point is the furthest you have to go. So you know how to kind of that's interesting. That's really interesting. What's Stiller like as a director? Is he strikes me as he's got an incredible visual flair. I mean, the show looks like a Kubrick movie. But how is he? How is he with actors?
Well, yeah, as you know, Ben is an actor, and Ben's been in showbiz since he's a kid. I mean, Ben, his entire life has been in showbiz. You know what I mean? He's the child of extremely talented parents.
Yeah.
So Ben understands that directors, that actors, what actors need, and you have to be careful with an actor because you can say the wrong thing and send them down the wrong road.
Right.
So the best compliment that I can give any director, and there's a couple of guys that I've worked with, Ben being one of them, that and the other one was Phil Hoffman, Phillips Seymour Hoffman, as it was one of the greatest directors I'd ever worked with, is that you always know that those guys are never going to let you look like an asshole. You know what I mean? That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal for an actor. You're like, this guy has my back.
Yeah.
So he's going to ask me to do things that are going to be like, you're going to go to the fucking edge, but I know he's not going to let me look bad. And that was a big deal, because in this thing, I had to do things where I didn't know what the visual effects that was going to be added in post was going to look like.
Of course.
So I had to trust him. He would be like, you're gonna go down this hallway, and then you're gonna have pain, and then what's gonna happen behind you is it's gonna move like this, and I'm like, there's no way I could fucking know. I could imagine it.
Yeah.
I could imagine it in my head, but if I didn't trust him, we're fucked. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest compliment that I can give Ben. He's a fucking great director, and he's very clear on what he wants. There's no ambiguity, man. He's crystal clear on what he wants, and he wants choices in the edit. He wants to be able to cut this thing, 50 ways. Like, and I don't mean 50 ways visually.
50 ways
50 ways emotionally.
Yeah.
Right, because the visual was very, Jessica Lee Gagne, who shot it, who's worked very closely with him, did Dannemora with him.
Oh, okay.
Is a fucking genius.
Yeah.
She's like 31 years old.
Oh, fuck, is she?
Yeah, she was probably in her late 20s when she shot Dannemora.
But as a photographer, you're probably a little extra attuned to this sort of thing. Are you the kind of guy who like wanders over to the monitor and goes, "What does this look like? What is this composition like?" Or do you stay?
My favorite. Well, you can't do that you can do that a little bit here, but Ben doesn't like. There's no like. There's some directors who are like. Like Soderbergh. Soderbergh, there's no monitors in a Soderbergh movie.
Oh, interesting.
There's no video village. The only monitor is on Soderbergh's camera, and he operates the camera.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want you to fucking ask him.
Fair enough.
Don't ask him for playback. Don't ask him how it looks. Don't fucking ask him anything.
Okay.
He'll tell you.
Okay.
He'll be like, he'll shoot this, and he'll be like, puts the camera down, and he's on to the next thing. That means he got it. He's not going to come over and go, "Hey, great job, Joe. That's really terrific." I mean, that's just not going to fucking happen.
Okay.
It's just not, and it's weird. It's weird for some actors, but once you get used to that shit, okay, that's what it is.
Right.
So Ben doesn't want to show you a lot of things. And you can look at it. You can look at he might go, "Come here, you look at the shot." But I know the lenses because I'm a camera nerd.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I love cameras, and I knew we were shooting in anamorphic.
Right.
Which is just a gorgeous, super wide, and I knew the lenses we were using, and I know the sizes. So there's a dance you can do with the camera, because the camera and the lenses are your partners.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
They're your partners in this. They're not your enemies. They can help you depending on what the focal length is of these lenses. How close are you?
Right.
How far away are you? Is it a two shot? what is in the frame? Billy Friedkin years ago, I was like very young. I was like maybe my second or third job. And I said to him, I go, Billy, what if I do this over here? And he goes, yeah, that's great, but you're not in the frame, so you're not in the movie. And I'm like, oh, copy that. Yeah, that's terrific, kid. But I don't know what movie you're in because you're not in this one.
I always think
it's fucking incredible.
I always think it's reasonable to ask, like, just where am I? Like, where do I cut off? Am I cut off like sternum? Am I like, crotch? Where is my cutoff? And can I adjust? I don't necessarily have to look at the monitor, but I like to know how much of me is there. What's interesting about Severance is how much negative space is used. There's those 4 cubicles in the center of the bullpen there, but then it's wide. It's, meters and meters of space on all sides. And there's also a lot of emptiness and quietude in the performances. There's a lot of moments, even when Pete is like in the dark night of his soul, there's still moments of incredible stillness. It's a very dynamic show in that regard. Because you've got these various levels of like incredible intensity and then incredible quiet. Was that something you were cognizant of while you were making it, or did it just, when you watched the finished product, you're like, oh, look at that?
No, I mean, it's hard to envision the finished product,
sure.
Ultimately, but you can see the set design,
mm-hmm.
You can see the lighting, and if you've done this long enough, you get a sense of this is what's going on here. But it's hard to envision that some of those shots inside the MDR floor are just stunning. There's a great you could look. I think you can find it. There's an interview with Jessica Lee Gagne where she talks about shooting the show. And she had originally. I have it. I can send it to you.
I'd love to.
She had originally declined the job because she had said to Ben, "It's all walls, basically, and how do we make walls interesting? How are we going to make this fucking interesting? And then it's funny. The guy doing the interview said, "Well, now." They're the most interesting walls, in cinema.
I'm hesitant to say that the walls are a character, but the walls are a fucking character. I mean, particularly when...
No, they are. The whole thing is...
the walls are a metaphor. They're a visual marker. There are a bunch of things going on there. They divide what we know and what we don't. I mean, there's just, the lit major in me is just obsessed with the walls.
Oh, the walls are... Just imagine the symbolism of walls in our own lives and in everything. This thing with her is interesting. I think you dig watching it, man, because it's she's just I find her super compelling, and I think she's supremely talented, cinematographer.
You're in Miami right now. You grew up there, right? After being born in Havana?
I was born in Havana, and I came when I was 2.
Oh, when you were 2. Okay, so even earlier than I realized. So it kind of sounds like your parents were, you're named, are you in fact named for Yul Brynner? Is that true?
I was named for Yul Brynner. My mother was infatuated with Yul Brynner. I know it's very hard to be a Cuban kid going around with the name Yul, because people always thought your name was Julio. And I was like,
of course.
No, it's Yul. I go, oh, Yuli? I go, no, it's just fucking Yul. Although I learned, this will be interesting. I learned later on that Yul Brynner's name, in fact, his full name was like Yuli or like Yulia, or you know, it was, and then they sort of shortened it to Yul.
It's a Russian name, right?
It is a Russian name.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's a Russian name. But my mother had this, it's so crazy because my mother had this infatuation with Yul Brynner. My mother was an actress.
Okay.
And then came to this country with myself and my sister. I have an older sister, and no husband. You know, my parents were already on the outs, and so didn't speak English. Had to get 2 jobs, and then so I was named after Yul Brynner, and when I was a kid, so my grandmother worked in the box office of a movie theater in Cuba for probably 25 years, in the ticket office. When I was a kid, I never wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be, my heroes were British guitar players.
Okay.
My heroes were Jimmy Page and Clapton and Brian May from Queen,
Sure.
and Richie Blackmore from Deep. I mean, I wanted to be, that's what I wanted to be. And I played in bands my whole fucking life, up until my life takes a very sharp.
Oh, we're gonna talk
left.
about Diving for Pearls. Don't you fret. We're getting there.
No, listen, I tell people I've had 3 lives. But when I was a kid, my grandma would say to me, you look like Tyrone Power. I'd be like,
Oh, I see that.
Grandma, I don't know who the fuck that is. Tyrone Power. I don't know who Tyrone Power is. So this just went on and on and on. I found out recently, this is nuts, that Tyrone Power was doing a movie and he dies. He dies just as about the movie's about to begin.
He dies on set.
It's replaced by Yul Brynner.
That's right. Oh, what is the name of the
replaced
film?
by Yul Brynner.
What is the name of the film? God, he dies.
I forgot the name of the film.
There's a shot of him and George Sanders on set just before Tyrone Power has his heart attack. I know my father was a massive Tyrone Power fan, and so I grew up watching, Blood and Sand and all that stuff. What is that fucking movie called? I'll fix it for the outro. But that's crazy. So, but it sounds like you. So,
isn't that crazy?
That is really wild. But it sounds like you've got this. It sounds like you've got this very unusual childhood where, like, no child of mine is going to be a CPA. You're going to be an actor, young man. It kind of sounds like there's this incredible encouragement to do a job that a lot of parents don't encourage.
Well, I was very. My mother supported all of the artistic endeavors, from buying me a drum kit when I was 6 years old,
my God.
which is, no parent should ever do for a child.
Yeah, my son wants.
We lived in.
Yeah, my son wants a drum kit, and no fucking way. No, I'll encourage his guitar playing, but I'm not going. I don't want a drummer in my house.
Well, I mean, do you have a big home?
Not big enough for a fucking drum kit, I'll tell you that right now.
Well, we lived in an efficiency,
for God's
which is
sake.
It's what they call here in Miami Beach is what's a studio.
Uh-huh.
And it was me and my mother and my sister and my grandmother. Okay.
Right.
So I shared a bed with my grandmother because I was little. My sister had her own bed and my mother slept on a couch. And in the fucking corner, man, was my drum kit.
Wow. They loved you.
Okay. So don't let your son watch this interview, because you'll be fucked.
No, I wouldn't dream of it.
Because if you have even 3 more feet of space, you'd get him a drum kit.
No, out of the question.
Listen, you can buy him an electronic kit. He can put headphones on and play.
I might get him one of those things with the pads. I might do an electronic kit.
No one will hear it.
No one will be the wiser. It'll just sound like he's in there with a FedEx box. Great. Solomon and Sheba, by the way, I just looked it up. Because for anything,
wow!
If you're anything like me, you wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. So it's Solomon and Sheba. He was Solomon. Ken Vidor was directing, and he died on set. And yeah, it was replaced by Yul Brynner. So what were at what?
Wait, well, I just wanted to add one more footnote to that
Please.
Yul Brynner thing is that Yul Brynner. I also find out later on that Yul Brynner was an amazing photographer.
Was he? Oh, interesting.
Yes, and his daughter Victoria put out these 5 volumes of his photos, and it's called Yul.
Okay.
It's fucking nuts.
Oh, that's so cool. I know about, I know about
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper, and I know about Roddy McDowall and all the other great, photographers of that era of actor. I did not know about Yul Brynner. I got to look up his stuff. That's so cool.
Anyways, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, it's just crazy.
No, that's it. That's exactly the sort of tangent that I welcome. And it's so interesting that you too have pursued photography and you have pursued painting and you've pursued music. How do they all kind of feed each other? You had a fairly successful career as a musician before you transitioned into acting. What did you learn from being in a band that serves you as an actor?
That I'm not sure I want to be in a band again.
Well, there's so much heavy lifting.
I mean,
there's so much lifting in a band.
It's being in a band is listen, I'm friends with guys in huge bands, like bands that like that are like some of my best friends. You know what I mean? And we talk about one of them is on, 2 of them are on the road right now, actually. And they're like, and they're sometimes like, yeah, this motherfucker, man, like, fuck him, and like, so, bands are tough, look, I started playing guitar, because I loved guitar playing. I wanted to be Jimmy Page. I loved what he was doing. I loved his musical brain. I loved Brian May and these guys, and I wanted to play. And I was a kid, grew up down the street from where I am right now, like, fucking wood shopping in his bedroom, man. You know what I mean? Like 8 hours and hours and hours, and then I'd go, and then I'd play in a cover band, and then I'd go to school, and then I'd go to work, and then so this was like I didn't sleep. It was like I just wanted to be that, and then I got in a band, and then I moved to New York and got in a band. I was in a band. I go to New York basically to audition for a band that was, I need to add this because I think it's important. I always say that my life, a lot of my life, most of my life, really, let's say all my life, is a series of excellent decisions made by very smart women.
Okay.
Starting with my mother's decision to leave Cuba.
Okay.
To not want to live under that regime, right. And say, no food is not going to work.
Right.
No, we're going to, so taking her kids out of there, decision one by a woman, smart one, good. Then I grew up here. I played in a band. I took this place at that time as far as you could take being in a band here. There was I hit the ceiling.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and then it was like, where do you go? And my girlfriend at that time, again, smart woman, knew somebody in New York at Epic Records. Epic was looking at this band called Urgent. They were maybe going to sign this band, and they were looking for a guitar player. And this girl, Gigi Freddy is her name, says, we're going to New York. And I go, what? Like, you understand? I'm like this Cuban kid, never left. I lived with her. We had our own place, but I never left like where my mom lived.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was like,
had never been away from her city.
Right. I was the youngest in a house full of women. Just wrap your head around that for a second. You know what I mean? And Cuban. You know what I mean? It's like those ties, man. Those ties are deep. And like my mother was like the central figure in my life. So my girlfriend goes, "You're gonna die here. Like this is it. There's nothing else you can do here. So you're gonna go to New York and you're gonna audition for this fucking band. And if she engineers this whole thing, and I go."
What
and I get
year
the
is
job.
this? This is 80.
This is 84.
Okay. Okay, so you're like 19 years
No,
old.
maybe a little later.
Okay, you're 19
Huh?
or 20. You're fairly young. There's no music scene to speak
Yes.
of there's no like rock music scene to speak of in Miami at that point. It's predominantly Latin music, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, but there was there was a lot of disco. There was a rock scene, but it was cover bands.
Right, yeah. Yeah. There's no original rock
You
music.
were
either. Yeah.
you could play.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you could play in a cover band and play forever and play in these bars and you just want to fucking jump out of building. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, I can't, if I tell you the people that I've played in, you know, and that's a circuit we do, and that circuit would take you out to Alabama and Georgia and you come back down. That's how you earn the living as a cover band here,
Right,
man.
right.
You know, I played in some of the most fucking redneck bars you've ever seen in your life. Like, literally, where motherfuckers are throwing shit at you. You know,
Chicken
like,
wire.
not like straight out of the. Yeah, exactly. Straight. I played a bar in Homestead that had the chicken wire.
Hilarious. I love it.
Okay,
I love it.
it was a biker bar in Homestead, Florida.
Our younger,
have you been to Homestead, Florida?
Our younger listeners, we are referencing a wonderful scene in the Blues Brothers that apparently Yul lived through.
Correct.
All right, so you go up to New York to audition for Urgent.
I got the job,
Nice.
and then I'm in New York. I live in New York now. You know,
Yeah.
because we moved to New York, and Urgent winds up not getting signed to Epic, but to EMI, Manhattan Records EMI.
Great.
And we make 2 records. We make the first record, and it tanked beautifully. And then we were getting ready to make the second record, and because of my relationship with the singer in Judas Priest, and Glenn Tipton, the guitar player in Judas Priest, I knew a man called Tom Allom who had produced all the Judas Priest records and Def Leppard.
Yeah.
And they're able to make a deal, and we do the second record with Tom Allom, which was the greatest experience I've ever had making a record, because making the first Urgent record was a fucking nightmare. And it's sad to say that. It's sad to say that because you wait your whole life to make your first record, to get a deal. It's like you're like a kid guitar player. You're like, when I get that deal,
Yeah.
Ma, you know, and there's the deal. And it was produced by Mick Ronson, may he rest in peace,
That should have been
and Ian Hunter.
okay.
Unfortunately, you know, that tanks as well.
I found a video for Diving for Pearls.
Diving for Pearls is another band. Again, how I arrive at Diving for Pearls is another story. But again, a band that wanted to kind of do the same thing. They were sort of very kind of polished. The band already existed. It was Danny Malone and Jack Moran, and then they had 2 other guys. That this woman, Gigi Freddy, the woman who
The girlfriend
got me
of
the
yours,
audition
right,
for the
yes.
first right, who at this time we were no longer together, but we were friends. She finds, because she had a fucking vision, man, that was crazy. She finds Diving for Pearls and says to them, "You 2 guys are great. I got to put all different people around you." And calls me and goes, "You got to come see these guys. They're great songwriters." And I was like, "Yeah, the songs are good." You know what I mean? And then and then she gets Diving for Pearls the deal. She begins to shop that band around. That band gets signed. We basically get signed out of the China Club in New York City, which
I remember the
time
China
was-
Club. Yeah. Where was that?
Yeah, of course.
Where was the China
That was
Club?
that was on Broadway in the 70s.
Yes,
or the
that's
60s.
right, because it wasn't anywhere you'd expect to find a rock place. Something near like the Beacon Theater.
It was by the Beacon, and you went downstairs.
Yes, got it.
Yeah, it was that place was, that was like, if you were going to play anywhere in New York, that's where you wanted to play,
Yeah.
and so we would pack that place. And it was like, we became this like sort of hot band in New York. And that's how we got signed out of there. But again, not stuff that was terribly interesting for me to play.
Let's transition then, because you make an interesting transition here from music to acting, and by working in a musically centered film, The Mambo Kings, where you're part of the band. I just watched it last night. Amazing cast. Oh my God, that cast is insane. I mean, Vondi Curtis Hall is in there, and Roscoe Lee Brown, and then and I'm like, I was staring at the screen. It's like, is that J.T. Taylor from Kool and the Gang? And it is, playing Celia Cruz's godson. It's bonkers. So did you?
It is bonkers.
Yeah, that cast is phenomenal. By the way, did you shoot that in? That's L.A. playing New York, right? Most of it.
We shot it in L.A.
Yeah, because there's a couple shots where like the establishing shot is Central Park, and then the close up, I'm like, that's Griffith Park. Don't bullshit a bullshitter. I'm sorry.
No, that's Griffith Park.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that
how does that come across? How does that come to you?
So again, so the lead singer in Diving for Pearl's girlfriend at the time, and I used to talk about, because because I loved acting, and I loved movies, and I would watch movies. I had respect for actors. Because again, my grandmother and my mother, and that. But so she says to me, "Hey, Oliver Stone is doing a movie about the Doors," and so she worked at an agency called the Lucy Kroll Agency, which is a very, very old, very New York theater actor agency. They represented a lot of the sort of the royalty of Broadway. These, they had James Earl Jones and, these sort of iconic actors, and Lucy Kroll herself was about 90 something years old and didn't really run the agency, but there was a woman there, again,
very smart woman,
a woman with a fucking plan, called Holly Levitt. She looks at me and she goes, it's amazing. She goes, listen, I don't know if you can act, but you're kind of interesting. and I would be your agent, but you would have to study acting. Like I would have to, you'd have to study acting, and you'd have to really, if you're really going to do this seriously. And I was like, so Diving for Pearls we'd just gotten dropped by Epic.
Okay.
Another record that tanked.
Sure.
Tanked wonderfully. Again, they were supposed to tank, John.
They were supposed to tank.
I was not supposed to be there.
They were supposed to tank. This was
not
Boucher. Yeah, by all means, yeah.
So I go, Holly says, meet with these teachers. I meet with a teacher called Bill Esper.
Oh, yeah, of course. William Esper Studios, yeah.
Exactly. Who I start to study with. And he begins to change my life, begins to change my way of thinking, the way I feel. So I go on the audition for the Doors movie. I don't get that.
Were you going for Robbie Krieger?
I don't know. I don't even know what I don't even remember.
Okay.
It was like general sides, it's like they would just give you sides from whatever, and they would like, they were like mixing and matching. It was like 31 flavors. I mean,
yeah, of course.
Probably, I don't fucking know. I'm a spitting image to Robbie Krieger. Horrible. By the way, did you watch him? God bless him. Did you watch him playing the national anthem?
No.
Like recently?
No, I didn't.
On slide guitar?
Oh no.
It's painful.
Is it going to bum me out?
It's it'll make you weep.
Oh, I don't want that.
That's what it'll do.
No, I'm just barely hanging on as is. No,
but
okay.
yeah, mad respect for him. But
yeah.
No, so I don't get that job. So I'm in the acting class and I'm going along and like, you know, and the guys in the band literally come to me and go, you know, we don't dig that you're doing this acting class thing. And like, you know, you're either, you know, we're trying to get another deal and you're either in the band or you're not in the band. And what are you going to do? So they basically gave me this ultimatum, you know, and I go to Bill Esper and I say, hey man, you know, these guys are basically saying like, are you know, and Bill looks at me and goes, hey man, you know, I can't tell you what to do, but you know, if you're asking me if I think that you have talent as an actor, the answer is yes. But you have to make your own decisions. So I literally go back and I quit the band that fucking night.
Wow.
And which was very strange. So I was in a cab on 8th Avenue going home and I realized, and I thought, what have I done? What have I fucking done? My whole life has been a guitar player, you know what I mean? So now I'm in this acting class and I get my first job. Literally a few months later, I get my first job. So what happens is I start auditioning for this movie called The Mambo Kings. And literally, and in match, I went in, long hair, I had it in a ponytail, and I slicked it back. It's just whatever. I started reading for this movie, and I read like 6 times. I even wound up reading for Antonio Banderas' part. I start reading like for a tiny part, and then I read for another part, and then I wound up reading for Antonio Banderas' part. And then I get a phone call that Arnie Glimcher, the guy who directed the movie, wants to have a meeting with me.
Great.
So I go see Arnie. Arnie, I don't know do you know Pace Gallery? Pace Wildenstein Gallery?
Yeah.
Big, that's Arnie. Arnie owns Pace Gallery.
Oh, okay. I don't think I realized that. All right.
Right. Yeah, Arnie's an art dealer. You know, he business his whole life. I mean, not just an art dealer, one of the most prestigious art dealers in the world.
That's really interesting because I was struck by the use of color in Mambo Kings and how visually it takes place in the 50s, but also kind of looks like the sort of film that was shot in the 50s. It looks like a Technicolor Douglas Sirk melodrama.
Yeah, it's saturated.
It's very saturated. Yeah, it looks amazing. So it makes sense that the guy would have his foot in the visual arts world. Go on. Sorry.
Again, the man who shot the Mambo Kings was a man passed away called Michael Ballhaus.
Oh, sure, of course.
Who you know shot Goodfellas. I mean,
yeah, legendary cinematographer.
Yeah. So I go to Pace to meet Arnie. It was all the auditions were at Pace Gallery on 57th Street.
Oh, wow.
And the casting director was Billy Hopkins, who again is a guy who gives me 3 amazing jobs. Like he basically started my career. You know, I owe great debt to people like Billy Hopkins and Risa Brayman and you know, A.V. Kaufman. This is people that are insanely kind to me, you know. So Arnie says, hey man, look, I really like you. I'm going to cast this guy from Spain called Antonio Banderas. He's a big star in Spain, but I really fucking like you. And I want you in the movie. I don't have a part for you, but I want you in the movie. So we're going to make up a part for you. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, you and I, we're going to create a part because I want you in the film. And that's the story. That's how I got my first job. And the next thing I know, I'm on my way to Los Angeles where they go cut all my hair off.
Yeah.
Because it's 1952.
Yeah.
And haven't been in a band since, John.
Wow. What's interesting about the movie is that it's a movie about 2 musicians from Cuba, and you might be one of the only Cubans in the film. Were you cognizant of that? Were you the resident Cuba expert? Did it kind of annoy you? I'm not trying to start shit where there doesn't have to be shit, but was there a part of you that was like, we couldn't find more Cubans to be in this movie?
You know, there's a couple of other Cuban guys that are real salsa musician guys that are in the movie. To be honest with you, I was so happy to have a job.
Right.
I didn't even think of that.
Right.
I mean, I didn't. Now, this is going to really blow your fucking mind.
Hit me.
We did a reading of the movie. We did a reading of the movie at Pace with Kevin Kline in the Armand Assante part.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's a choice. That's okay. Armand Assante, who it should, okay. How did that go?
Yeah, I don't know. It was good. I don't know that. I think Kevin was maybe testing the waters. I didn't, and then having conversations with Arnie, he confided in me that Jeremy Irons had wanted the part and had done a screen test for it.
See, it's wow. Okay, interesting.
It was a different time, my friend.
No, I know it was a different time. I recognize that. And you see, Armando Assante is interesting because he was, of that era, he was probably the most ethnically ambiguous actor. He would go back and forth like, hi, you're Mike Hammer, and next week you're a Puerto Rican drug lord. And that was his career for that golden era of Armando Assante. And then he's French in Private Benjamin. You know, he's just all over the place.
Correct.
He's like the Oscar Isaac of his time. Like anyone with dark hair, he can play him. Go. And that's obviously amazing. None of that stuff would happen now, for better or for worse. But that's so wild that they would go so far as to be like, actually, for our Cuban band leader, I like Jeremy Irons. That's my guy. The fact that was even a discussion.
Well, I think I think Jeremy Irons pursued it.
Really,
I think he pursued it because I think you have to understand, it's Jeremy Irons who doesn't screen test for anything.
Right. Interesting.
Jeremy Irons. He was already Jeremy Irons. He was like, and I think he got an
Oscar by
test.
then. By then, he's got an Oscar for Reversal of Fortune. Yeah,
he had an Oscar for playing Klaus von Bülow. Right. So I think he wanted it. I think he felt, and I don't blame him for this. He was like,
it's an amazing role.
This is another side of me the world doesn't think I have.
Yeah,
you know
sure.
what I mean? I want to do this. And then I think Arnie said to me, I think for 5 minutes, De Niro was in the part.
Oh, wow.
I think Arnie said that. It's a very long time ago, so my memory could be completely fucked up.
No, I see that too. That makes a certain amount of sense too. I mean, you need someone who's got this incredible authority and stage presence. That's what's cool about the Mambo Kings, is that sometimes you see movies about bands and you see the band perform and you're like, that's all right. The Mambo Kings are just a great live act. The concert footage in that movie is really dynamic and fun. You're like, God, that'd be a great night out. I would love to see this band. And that isn't always the case for movies about fictional bands. Did you guys rehearse as a band?
We rehearsed as a band. I obviously am not a horn player.
Right.
But we had lessons, and we wore these earwigs, and we would sync to these earwigs.
Okay.
So, the tracks were the tracks. We had to stick to a certain track because they were lip syncing to, they did record, I think, the singing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were lip syncing to it. So we were all syncing to a track, but the timbali player in that band, the bass player, all those guys, they play for real.
Yeah.
They play for real, man.
Yeah.
For real. Yeah, they were the real fucking deal.
It's a really it's a fun slice of life of that era of the New York music scene. It's really I was going to watch it just for your scenes and then ended up watching the whole thing. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I don't have a lot to do in the movie, but the movie,
you're in it so much though. I mean, you don't talk a lot, but you're in it so much, and they always say listening is the hardest part of acting. You're invested in so many of your scenes, watching the brothers break down at each other, that you're a crucial part of that film.
Well, thank you for saying that. I haven't watched the film in I don't even know how long it's been. What I was going to say to you is that the film really, the genesis of the film is really from a very honest place, because Arnie is a real lover and aficionado of Mambo.
Yeah.
And would go to the Palladium and dance at the Palladium. And when the book comes out, Arnie loves the book.
This is the Oscar Huelos
so
book upon which the film is based, right?
That he buys the rights.
Wow. Okay.
Then the book wins the Pulitzer,
Right.
which then becomes another. So Arnie had never directed a film. It's a very interesting situation. He'd never directed a movie. But he, through tenacity, and desire and power, he had the ability, gets the fucking movie made, which is incredible to me.
That is incredible. As long as we're I'm going to ask about a role that is somewhat mired in controversy through no fault of your own, but it's one of your rare comedic roles, so I really want to discuss it. I'm talking about your work on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a recurring role as Bob on that show. There's one episode that just is been locked away in that can't be shown anymore. What was that experience like for you?
In what sense? How do I arrive there?
How do you arrive there, for one thing? How do you arrive there with, because it's a very specific pitch that Seinfeld was at in terms of the performances on that show. And yes, it's a multicam, but it's sort of there's a very specific style to what worked on that show. Everyone, because Seinfeld is such and he'll be the first to tell you, is such a one-note actor, he had to surround himself by these genuine clowns, these people with like deep stage work behind them. So it's not like Friends. It's not like Cheers, where everyone's kind of grounded. There's a certain like higher pitch to the acting on Seinfeld.
There's a. You're right. You're absolutely right. And it's a particular style that it's hard to explain, but it is. It's a certain rhythm you got to go into. The character's name is Bob the Intimidating Gay Guy.
I did not realize that was the full name.
Woman,
okay.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, the Holly Lebed, the woman I referenced earlier. I was in LA, and she says, I have a last minute audition for you for Seinfeld. I don't think I'd done a sitcom, and I didn't really, it's weird. I never envisioned myself doing a sitcom.
All right.
So she goes, you have to go to CBS Radford. Like back then you literally would go, you get the sides right there. Maybe they just wrote the character, like those things would they write them and then, that works tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like crazy shit like that.
But you're not going to get a PDF because you don't have email. So it's just, it's completely flat. You're basically doing a cold read.
There was no PDF. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I go to Radford and I get the size and I look at this thing and I go, what the fuck am I going to do with this thing? And I have this idea to do an imitation of my mother. My mother's a very, very intense Cuban woman who was very in your face. You know what I mean? And my mother was very, very, there was one law in my house, no negotiation. And that was my mother.
Yeah.
So I go, I'm just going to fucking do that. So I go in the room and Jerry and Larry David are in the room and the casting director.
Wow.
And I go in the room and I do that, what you saw. And then I stop and they look at me and they're like, what was that? And I go, it's an imitation of my mom. He's like, can you do it again? I go, yeah. So I did it again. Then they gave me a couple of notes. They're like, okay, great. Wait outside. It's one of those things sometimes it would make the actors wait outside. It's usually good news. It was such a, what? Except all the actors are waiting.
Oh, I see. Okay.
You may have 4 or 5 guys there.
Ah.
You have 4 or 5 guys there, and then they're like, come back in again, and it's really fucking. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Horrible. It's humiliating.
It's really nerve-wracking. Yeah.
It's humiliating. Then they'll be like, yeah, Timmy and Henry, you guys can go. So and so, you stay. And then those guys keep going back in again, and you keep going back in it's fucking horrible. John, it's fucking horrible.
If
I ever directed anything, I would never do that to an actor. I would never do that to an actor.
No.
I have these fantasies of like one day if I direct something, which I don't know that I want to direct anything because I hate people asking me questions, and that's all directors get.
Yeah.
It's fucking questions.
Yeah, the buck stops with you. Every buck stops with you when you're directing. Sounds awful.
And the weight of the budget is on you, So they hire me. They hire me, and I go, and they're like, this. You start working day after tomorrow or tomorrow, some shit. I don't even remember. And I go, oh, okay. So I go, and it's the first episode. It's the Armour.
Yeah.
It's the soup Nazi.
Yeah.
And I meet the guy who plays my boyfriend.
The late great John Paragon.
Do you know who that's it.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. That was almost the coolest thing about the whole thing, because I was such a fan of that guy, and I was such a fan of Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Yeah.
And I go, fucking hell, you're John B. the fucking genie.
Yeah. Mecca High, Mecca High Ho. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to talk to him about was like, and he told me so many stories of Paul and how Paul came up with the character, and then all the
Paragon and Paul Rubens
with,
came up with the Groundlings together in that class that included Cassandra Peterson.
Elvira.
Yeah, sure. That whole crowd.
He told me about Elvira sort of appearing, how she, how they would bring in these things, pieces of it, and then they would put it together, and then it became what those things became. But it was kind of crazy. But so, we did it. We did the first one, and then one of the funniest things is watching Larry David give me notes as Bob the Intimidating Gay Guy. So imagine Larry David going, "Can you do it like this?"
Oh no! Oh wow!
Fucking amazing!
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was kind of incredible. So then I do one more. Then we do the Puerto Rican Day Parade episode, which was the one that really kind of, he throws the sparkler lights the Puerto Rican flag on fire. Then he's putting it out, he's stomping on it, and then it became a whole thing. And then Jerry apologized, which, to be honest, I didn't think he should have apologized. I don't think you can, because it wasn't done in that way. Right. I know the way that it was meant, and I think when you begin to apologize for comedy, we're so fucked.
Well, the flag thing is maybe that's maybe another podcast. What is interesting to me as a New Yorker was those were so many of my neighbors was incredibly young, hot guy, slightly older guy who was caretaker / boyfriend. Like, that trope is a trope for a reason. I grew up in Midtown Manhattan. There were a gazillion. Yeah. Those are my mom's friends. Those are, my mom's coworkers in publishing. Those are the guys on my block. And it was and yet I had never, what Seinfeld did so well was it showed you the parts of New York that everyone knew about but had never been caught on film. That's right, man. That's right. And no one was spared on Seinfeld from a jab. No, and that's the thing is that it never really felt too punch downy. It was just punch everywhere, everyone was getting punched at one point or another. And it's going to sound, everybody got punched. It's going to sound like I'm making excuses, and I recognize that, but I feel like there was such a genuine gleeful need to offend everybody on that show that I think is one of the reasons it's still in the canon. as such a
Oh,
fun
yeah.
show. Yeah.
I think if I'm not, and I could be wrong. I think that episode is now available.
Oh, is it now? It was like the second to
I think
last. It's like the second to last episode ever of the series.
It is.
It is the second to last.
Episode.
Holy shit!
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was on hold for the last episode, and then they wound up not using the character, but it was the second to last episode.
Wow.
It was absolutely the second to last episode. In fact, I have a script that I have in a box signed from Jerry and Michael Richards. Like, I think Jerry wrote to the greatest Seinfeld villain ever.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Love you, like,
wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It's,
Wayne Knight better not hear about that. Fucking Newman better not get wind of that shit. We might have to cut that out. Whoa. Yikes. Now we got political. Just
the character, I think Rolling Stone did top 50 Seinfeld characters ever, and I think I'm like number 12 or some shit.
Nice.
It became like
nice.
It became, it just sort of took off. It was just, I had no idea. I had never watched Seinfeld.
Oh wow, interesting.
So I didn't know anything about it.
You've mentioned you're talking about like acting with John Paragon, and you've talked about a couple of them. Who are some other actors you liked as you were coming up? You were obviously watching a ton of movies and TV as a kid. Who were some actors, not necessarily big stars, but people sort of in the corner of the screen that were like, oh, that's who's that guy? I want to know more about him. Who were some guys like that?
There was. The one that comes most to mind, and I remember working with Chris Walken was wild and incredibly exciting. Maybe the most generous actor I've ever experienced off camera. Like giving off camera, which you always want to give more, so your fellow actor has more things to react to,
right?
Because by the time maybe they've turned around on him, you've done it 80 times and it's gone fucking. You got to give him something else.
Right.
So he's incredible. But there's a guy. I got a job, and this is later on. This is probably about 10 years ago. That I had admired so much that I thought he was one of our great actors. So I got a job on a show called Treme to play David Morse's partner.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And I was like, they're like, yeah, and I was like, I literally just said yes. I didn't know when I heard, yeah, it's David Morse's partner. I'm like, yes. And so I go to New Orleans. I made my first day, and I'm a little nervous. Because I'm in awe of David Morse, and in fact, I think any actor who isn't is dead.
I'm a fan from St. Elsewhere. I go back to St. Elsewhere with that guy. I love his work.
He's incredible.
Dancer in the Dark.
He's fucking incredible.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh, dude, ridiculous. So my first day, I gotta I have to work with him now for like 6-7 episodes, and I have to be, so the first day they go, Yul, this is David Morse, and he's very, he's very friendly, but he has this exterior of like, he puts his hand and he goes, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
And I shook his hand, and I go, hey man, can I talk to you a second? And he goes, yeah. He goes, hey, I just want to tell you this, man. Like I'm a huge fan of yours, and I think you're one of our greatest actors, and there's a couple of people who have careers that I dream of having, and you're one of those guys. And I just need to tell you, for me, this is an unbelievable thrill, and I'm just going to tell you this now, and I'm not going to say it again, but I need to just say it because I need to just get it out. And he looks at me, he goes, well, thank you for saying that, Yul. And that was it. Yeah. And we carried on, and him and I are we're good buds.
Nice.
And he's that was a big thrill to work with that cat, man.
Well,
That
he does this thing where he has a quietude to his performances that he uses to great effect when he's doing something funny, and he has done some comedy. He's also played some horrifically menacing characters. He's on Broadway right now playing a sex offender as we speak, in the revival of How I Learned to Drive. But were you drawn to like the I mean, that's a guy who always acts like the frame is really tight. You know, he's just got a real subtlety to him, no matter what he's doing.
It's very restrained work, and I think that's the work that thrills me. It's the work that Montgomery Clift did, who's probably my favorite actor. Like histrionics, gilding the lily is nothing that fucking interests me. I want to take away as much as I can, and have a director say, put some back in, or take away more. But you know, even on stage, you can be insanely still and be insanely powerful. You know, I've experienced it. I know it. It's possible.
Well, I think you get some of that instinct from music. I think your work as not just a guitarist, but a drummer probably makes you a little more tuned to the power of silence. You think that's fair to say?
Yeah, I think it is fair to say, absolutely, because it's about, you know, in music, it's about some more than what you play, it's what you don't play.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's what notes do you leave out? You know what I mean? And I think my comedy, I don't know, it's funny because people don't really sort of know me for comedy, but I've done a lot. You know, like Motherfucker with the Hat, which I did on Broadway, is a comedy.
Yeah, it's a dark one, but it is a comedy. Yeah.
It's a dark one.
Yeah.
It is a dark kind. Yeah, you're right. But I think being a drummer helps you. You understand time, and you understand rhythm.
Yeah.
You know, I remember finding out that Peter Sellers, another one of my idols, was a jazz drummer.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense.
Crazy, right?
That makes
his parents had a vaudeville act.
Oh, wow.
And he was like a kid drummer, and he's like a jazz drummer.
It would have been actually like more of a music hall act in Britain, I imagine. Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, there's a certain there's a sense of like playing along and knowing when to come in and when to come out. And as much as he's known for his broad characterizations, there's a great deal of subtlety in his broad character. You look at the president in Dr. Strangelove, you know, who is, you know, the most...
Or look at Being There.
Or Being There, yeah, by all means. These are
Being There is such restraint.
Understated performances. Speaking of understated performances, Russian Doll's coming back, and what's interesting, it's sort of you're shooting it around the same time as you're shooting Severance, but the guy in...
No, I'm not in Russian Doll.
You're not in the second one?
2.
You're not in the second season?
I'm not in the second season of Russian Doll. No, I had one. It was a 1-season deal.
What's interesting about Russian Doll, this is actually a thing that goes through a lot of your career, is you've got this tendency to get jobs that reflect something going on in the zeitgeist right now. You know, we're starting to talk more about the idea of alternate universes, and that's becoming a little more of a mainstream idea outside of scientific circles because of the Marvel Universe, but also because of stuff like Russian Doll. You know, people start to question the drug war, and then you book Narcos, and we start to, you know, what are the roots of this thing? You know, was this all worth the money and the violence? But Russian Doll is interesting because you're kind of along for the ride. How do you shoot that show? Do you shoot all your stuff in a row? Do you kind of come back and you do it as episode by episode?
Yeah, you do it. Yeah, you do it episode by episode, and you have to really track it, and you have to have a great script supervisor.
Yes.
Who knows where you are, and then who knows that you got to go back from here, and then this is the reverse of that, and and all that kind of stuff. Yes, it was. I remember reading it and going like, I thought it was amazing. I was like, this. They sent me the first 2 episodes of season 1. I was like, fuck, this is so good. You know what I mean? This is so good. I think season 2 goes in another direction because I don't know anything about season 2.
Okay.
So I don't want to pretend to know anything of that, but I thought I'd heard that it went into another way because I don't know how much of that sort of Groundhog Day thing you can
sustain.
You can do.
Right.
You know what I mean, yeah, you know.
But for the part that you did work on, there's a part you kind of seem like her North Star to a certain extent. Like you're the ex, but you're a constant in her life. You're a sort of calming influence in your life. Was that something you talked about with Natasha and the directors, or did it just kind of come very naturally to you, where you were going to be just sort of like her port in a storm?
I think it's written. It's written in. It's like the port in the storm that she constantly pushes away and just kind of, you know, really sometimes it's not very, very nice to him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And he keeps coming back for more. You know what I mean? I used to ask, why does he keep coming back? Does he just love punishment? You know, they'd be like, he's so in love with her. I'm like, okay, you know. The thing about that is she's so, you know, I've known her a long time, and
Natasha?
She's a friend, and yeah, she's a friend, and wanted me to do this. And I got to, you know, it was interesting for me to play something I don't get to play a lot is the romantic lead, the guy who kisses the girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's, you know, and I'm starting to take that personally. I got to be honest with you.
Oh, well, maybe you want to get into this conversation. We're going to be here all day, man. You know, good Lord. I can't tell you how many times I have literally been in like the montages of like the horrible date montage that you see in movies sometimes of like, oh, this is how hard it is to be a single woman. You got these losers lining up for you. That's me. I have done those montages. It's so cry me a river. You'll be okay. You get there when you get there. To get there in your 50s though is fantastic. How cool is that?
No, it's very good. It's
Silver Fox.
Very good. And then in Promised Land, I got to, you know, it's funny. My hair during the pandemic, I was not working obviously, so there was no dye in it. So this is my natural hair color. And then when Stiller sees it, he goes, "Hey man, I really like your hair like that." Of course, I look just like him. You could literally like. There's a picture of him directing me. I'm like, I go twins.
That's amazing.
Separated at birth. I mean,
that's amazing. Yeah, you guys do. Yeah, you guys
he's
are
like,
similar.
"Hey, can we?" Yeah, we have literally the same fucking haircut and the hair color now. But he said, "Hey, can we keep your hair like that?" And I go, "Yeah, it's super easy." So he really liked it. And then for Promised Land, which again I get to kiss the girl. It's funny. It's come later in life when I get to kiss the girl.
Tell me a little bit more about Promised Land.
Promised Land is it's on Hulu. We'll see what happens with it if it gets another season. It's a family drama, and it's about an immigrant family who comes and makes an amazing life, a very wealthy life for themselves. And there's 2 brothers, and the brothers have a falling out, and you know there's a lot of other complicated family dynamics, but I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed Matt Lopez, the creator of the show, is just a lovely guy, and John Ortiz, who plays the patriarch, and I have known each other for 30 years, and we play brothers in this.
Are you? You mentioned. I'm sorry. You mentioned Motherfucker with a Hat. You mentioned Philip Seymour Hoffman. Were you a Labyrinth guy?
I'm one of the founding members of Labyrinth.
I apologize for not knowing that.
No worries, man. No worries. I'm no longer. It's a little. I'm no longer a lot. That's another podcast.
Okay.
But when Phil died, a lot of things went on there that I didn't agree with. Okay. So
the Labyrinth is this amazing theater company based out of New York that was founded by Yul and by Phillips Seymour Hoffman and a lot of amazing playwrights. We have even more. We have a ton of friends in common, dude. We have Ana Ortiz in common. We have Jason Manuel Olazabal in common.
I love Jason.
Jason's the
I
man.
did Bad Boys 2. That's where first time I met him.
I just saw Jason do Anna in the Tropics at a theater here in Altadena, playing the Lector. He's phenomenal.
That's right. That's what he said. He said he was doing that.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, man.
He's a terrific actor. I love that guy. Oh, that's so cool.
Great actor, great guy, and a good human, which not always the case.
Not always the case. No, it's absolutely true. He's my neighbor, and our kids are friends, and I know Jason's been involved with the lab for 20 plus years, and so it's always fun when that connection comes up. Yul, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Your website is yulvazquez.com, which is predominantly your visual work.
It's only my visual work. There's nothing about acting on there. I don't have a website for acting. It is, if you don't know I'm an actor and you go to that site, you'd be like, who the fuck is
this great painter and photographer?
That's very kind of you.
No, I'm actually. It's very stunning work. We're in an audio medium here, but it's really striking work. And we talked about you cited Basquiat and Cy Twombly as people you've admired. What has painting taught you? What has painting and photography taught you about acting?
You know, to be in tune with to be present, really. To me, that's the whole key to all of it, to life even. You mean, you know, I can go to work and be across from an actor, and I can tell that they've already decided how they were going to do this 3 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're not in the room with all of us. Like this.
You're just running lines in your bedroom, dude.
This is all part of, this table, this is all part of the gestalt, man.
Yeah.
This is all connected. You're not breathing this air. You're rehearsed this in the mirror, and I realize now, and it's funny because you can just tell right away. So a photograph, you know, and the work I do is I start walking down the street and I work with very fast cameras. Sometimes I work with bigger cameras, but that's a slower thing. I'm doing somebody's portrait on the street or something, but I'm usually walking and taking the pictures. So I'm just completely in tune with what's fucking going on. What spirits are coming, man. I mean, you know, and with a painting is the same thing. I'm just like, I stand in front of the thing and I'm like, where are we? Let's go. What's here? Start making marks. And then you know, and the thing about those two things is that there is no director or writer or editor in the way. It's literally the materials and my brain, and that's it, man. I mean, there's no one telling me don't do that, you know.
There's no monitor to look at. You're
incredibly honest.
Yeah, it's honest, and there's an autonomy that you don't always get as an actor.
And rare, by the time the people watch what we did, it's gone through so many hands.
Yeah.
So many people have picked at it. And if you're lucky and you get to work with the right people, then the right people picked at it. You know what I mean? And you're like, then you trust people they're like, yeah, I trust this guy because this guy, you just trust somebody. And there's some people some directors you go to work with and you're like, we're fucking doomed. You know, you just know. You know, like you go ask a guy a question and they don't have an answer, like their eyes glaze over, and I'm like, copy that. You know, Bill Esper used to say, now wrap your head around this. Bill Esper used to say, if I do one thing in this class, is to make you director proof.
Oh, wow.
So when you meet somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, they won't sink you.
That is
so you can float.
No one can fuck you up.
Man.
No one can fuck you up, and your ass is always covered. That is gorgeous.
Yeah, because you have guys asking you to do things where you're like, this is I'm not going to put this in your hands because I know what you'll do with this. So no, I'm not going to do that for you. You know.
Let's end there. That is a beautiful note to end on. Yul Vazquez, thank you so much for your time. It has been a delight talking to you.
John, the pleasure was mine, my friend. You're amazing.
And that is an episode wrap on Yul Vazquez. You can find him on Instagram at Yuluminati, Yuluminati. It works better visually. You look at it, you're like, oh, that's funny. If I spell it, it loses some of its magic. You can also find him at yulvazquez.com, which features all of his visual work, which, again, is really stunning and arresting. I recommend giving it a look.
Forever.